morning, everybody. Thank you. If I can get your attention, thank you. Now, we will go straight until lunchtime, and there is one of our rapporteurs who will be speaking partly in Spanish. So if you haven't already picked up your mics, your translating device, you may want to do this so quietly. But we are running a little bit late, so let's make the most of the time we have now. I think you all know who I am, and just in case, I'm Magdalena Moreno Mujica. I'm the Executive Director of IFACCA, and it's incredible to have you all here, and what a few days. And I've got next to me a partner in crime, Olu Alake, who has been the chair of our International Program Advisory Committee, and you can see the list of all our wonderful contributors, all of which are here except for Brooke Andrew and Farida Shahid, who have really been instrumental in developing our program. So, yes, Lisa Ravna, we did have a First Nations person helping us curate this program at the table. So, I'm very excited about this part of the session, which is called Open Floor. And over the last 3 days, we've had discussions, debates, exchanges. We hope the conversations have resonated with you, inspired you, and made you reflect, and most importantly, they've been meaningful to you, even if at times challenging. I'll hand over the mic to Olu shortly to pose our closing question, but I do want to remind you, when I spoke on Wednesday now, the days are getting a bit blurred, I did give you this following task: to think what you will take away from the summit by the time we reach Friday, and that we would have a discussion about this at the end. So here we are. After lunch, we will part ways. This will be your last opportunity to share your thoughts at this collective place and time. If there are ideas bubbling in your mind, collaborations, or simply a final thought, we certainly want to hear, and we want the delegates in the room to hear your thoughts. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to my esteemed colleague here, and we're going to try and make this really dynamic, the reason why we're not sitting. So we're going to ask you to also be dynamic in your responses, and so we can get through as many. Olu.
Thank you, Magdalena. So, 30 sessions later, and well done to anybody who managed to attend all of them. I don't know how you'd have done that. But we have learned a lot, we have said a lot, and one of the things, as Magdalena mentioned, that we said right at the beginning, and which we embedded in the design of the program, was that this be a solutions-oriented summit. And for solutions to be effective, and as we heard at the last panel, we need to take individual responsibility as well. So the question for everybody at this point is to reflect on what we are all going to do differently when we leave this room. And some guiding questions about that would help in this. What impact would you like to have? What are the things, or the one key thing or two key things that you have learned, heard, that has provoked you over the last couple of days, which you are going to utilize to create magic moments of change when you get back to your work? What opportunities post-COVID have you identified that can be utilized? And to borrow the words from a very magic moment that we had on stage here yesterday in one of the panels, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? The floor is open to you.
Olu, can I suggest we start off with Yodel, who was going to grab the mic when I took it away from him because we were running over time. So I made the promise that he could have it. So over to you. If you'd like to introduce yourself and just name and country, you might give a bit of context.
My name is
Ayodele Ganiu. I'm from Nigeria, founder and executive producer on Change Vibes Africa. I think I will start from what I wanted to say earlier, which is also solution. I believe in this engagement with stakeholders, especially those in authorities. And I find it difficult to believe that, from one of the issues addressed, that when artworks are asked to be taken down, when movies are, censored and all those stuff, as a result of, more often than not, as a result of the fact that these guys don't know, they don't understand the art or the works. I've worked in a number of African countries, and from where I come from, I've always believed in that as well. Maybe they don't understand. But I've led initiatives on engagement. I organized a summit last year where all these stakeholders were present. And we all agreed. For example, we all agreed that it is wrong for our national agency that controls or that regulates works of art to be called National Film and Video Censors Board. That the censors is a problem, is problematic on it, so it's a colonial notion. That it should just be classification board. Yielding some of our rights that, okay, let age be the decider of what content children can access. And that was agreed, and that was the outcome of that session. But today, as I speak, that same person and those in that authority are the ones saying that, yes, they've not been able to ban a content that is being contested now just because at the National Assembly, the bill has not been passed. So what I'm trying to say is that the knowledge is there. It's not because they don't know or they don't understand. The political will. Okay. The political will. So my suggestion is that as artists, activists, we should all take it as our responsibility to ensure that we scrutinize whoever is being appointed to head any cultural agency, any government that will involve policy formulation and implementation. We should always protest against people who are misfits in this position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Activism in policy engagement and the composition of panels. Thank you. We have a hand up over there. Can I ask that one of the mic people be over this side and one be over that side,
please? That's perfect.
Good morning. I'm Stéphane Gros-Claude from France, member of the World Youth Choir Foundation. I heard many panelists saying that we have to do together. And I heard also a phrase, who's missing? But I wonder if we just have to do together with the cultural actors chain, or more broadly, shouldn't yours, national agencies for culture and Ministry of Culture move to cultural rights affairs and ministries and agency and work with education, social affairs, justice, etc., in a real, transversal, inclusive, well, not inclusive, but reaching out politic. Inclusive, to me, is looking like I bring things and people to me, but I have to go to others. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this side, where's the microphone?
Only one.
Oh,
we have this one.
We only have one microphone.
Okay, you have to run forward then.
Okay, maybe to the technical support, if we can get another microphone, because otherwise we're never going to get there. Thank you. So I'm really sorry that's my. Excuse me, that's my phone speaking to me. Asking me if I need help. Yes, thank you.
Tina Tato Katoa, Karen Rangi, Chair of the Arts Council of New Zealand, and I'm standing on behalf of your Southern Hemisphere cousins who have been speaking at the table here about what contributions we can make to the conversations, especially the one this morning. So 3 ideas as potential solutions to the idea of that if we to have artistic freedom, that Indigenous voices need to be heard strongly. So number 1 is that in the Pacific region, we've got together the 22 countries to form our own Pacific Arts regional strategy as a means of developing, preserving and looking after our Indigenous arts. And I guess the process is as important as the result. So that's one idea as to how do we get the Indigenous people together. Number two, and we mentioned this at the members' meeting on Monday, that next year is FESPAC, the Festival of Pacific Arts, where the biggest arts gathering in the Southern Hemisphere, which was established 30 years ago to help the development, the voices of Indigenous arts and Indigenous artists, come to FESPAC. And IFACCA would be really great to have you there. And we put out that invitation on Monday, Tuesday, when we spoke about this. Solution number three, again, it's been really interesting for us from the bottom of the world coming up to the top of the world to hear the conversations. IFACCA, we think it would be really great to support the fabulous work that you're already doing, to make space for some Indigenous voices on the board. We've got some ready to go now to be able to contribute to the work and to help to share the load. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. So from this side, we're hearing a very concrete Pacific Arts Festival in Hawaii next year. And over to you, Olu.
Okay, thank you. We had a hand up in front here. Yes, that'll be you. Sorry. We need Usain Bolt in here.
And then we'll go to the back in Korea afterward.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was really touched by Ernesto's comment. One of his, it kind of passed by very quickly, but it was no more silence. No more silence. I have a very concrete suggestion. I think, first of all, one of the things that we learned during the pandemic was that the nature of culture has changed. I try to find that I use the terminology cultural intimacy, the necessity of trying to find new forms of cultural intimacy, not large events, not big rock concerts, not massive festivals, but cultural intimacy, itinerary and connected to the community. So this is one very concrete suggestion. Let's reduce the size and multiply the number. Secondly, I have a really concrete suggestion that I think about no more silence, and that is some kind of artist rapid response, quick response, units of artists, maybe regionally identified, who, when there is something that happens where artists need to be supported, we can immediately, simultaneously, in several regions of the world at the same time, manifest and support in solidarity with those artists that are there. And this will then be connected to, coordinated with arts agencies, cultural art, and also civil society, following, therefore, into governmental responses. That is, we're building, and the long-term goal would be building cultural initiative and cultural action into peace plans. When there will be a post-war Marshall Plan of some kind, for example, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, however long it lasts, at some moment there will be a time to redevelop. This quick response with artists at the beginning of it, from the very base, I think could be a useful network, we could call it, that could respond to endangered artists and endangered initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll go to the back. Thanks. Arts Council Korea.
There's someone there already.
Yeah, I am from Korea. 저는 그 통역을 쓰겠습니다.
Yeah, I'm from Art Council in Korea, and I'm gonna just use me, myself, translator.
저는 이번에 처음 입학가 총회에 참석을 했는데요. 여러 가지 의미 있는 것들을 많이 들었고 우리 인류가 보편적으로 지켜야 될 가치가 무엇인지 그것을 우리가 함께 어떻게 지켜나갈 것인지 하는 아주 좋은 문제 제기를 듣게 됐습니다.
As I am attending for the first time this time at IFACCA Summit, I first of all thank you IFACCA for creating this event. It was very meaningful and useful, also insightful about all together sit here in the same room and then thinking about how to safeguard the common values, not only about the art sector, but like in general.
저희 입장에서는 이 입학과 총회를 통해서 다양한 여러 국가들하고 그 네트워킹할 수 있는 좋은 기회가 됐고요. 구체적으로 12개 나라를 함께 만나가지고 여러 가지 사업에 대해서 논의를 할 수 있는 좋은 기회이기도 했습니다.
And not only about the sessions or discussions, I also met the representatives from about like 12 countries all over the world, and I was able to meet them and share the opinions and talk about our further cooperation. And yeah.
Thank you.
이렇게 좋은 입학과 총회가 그런데 3년마다 열린다라고 하는 것은 너무 아쉽다. 세계가 급격하게 기술 변화가 일어나고 있고 엄청나게 빨리 변하고 있는데 저 같은 경우에는 임기가 3년이에요. 다음 총회는 제가 참석할 수 있을지 없을지 모릅니다. 이렇게 3년마다 텀을 두고 한다라고 하는 게 과연 그 좋은 건지 좀 더 이 기한을 좀 땡겨서 할 수 있는 방법은 없는지 제안하고 싶고요.
So here's one of my suggestions, which is, as the world is changing so fast and so is the art sector, I would like to suggest what it might be like to hold this event more often. And also, especially in Korea, the term of the office for representative is only 3 years. So I don't know if I can come to the next summit or not, and it's not good for the keep the consistency. So.
Thank you.
그리고 이 총회 기간 중에 그 각 나라가 좀 자기 그 나라에서 지금 행하고 있는 여러 가지 정책들 중에서 소개를 하고 싶고 좀 나누고 싶은 부분들이 있다라고 하면 각국에게 그런 어떤 부스를 차리게 해서 그런 기회를 만들어주는 것도 좋겠다는 생각이고요. 첫 번째는. 두 번째는 같이 우리가 여러 가지 문제 제기된 논의들을 가지고 실천 과제를 함께 합의를 봐서 이 총회의 결과물을 내고 그것을 다음 총회 전까지 어떻게 실천할 것인가 구체적인 실천 플랜을 만드는 것이 좋겠다는 생각입니다.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, well, she has to translate.
Thank you. Thanks for the translation.
As the last one, so I have two practical suggestions. The first one is I hope there will be an opportunity to further exchange between the countries, such as the creating booths for the promote more the agenda in each country. And the second of all is I think it would be even better if we can talk more about the actionable item after this event and like a more concrete plan for how we can achieve something from this discussion, and then maybe it'll be even better if we can talk about that at the next summit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there's an issue about continuity of action from this summit into future ones there. Thank you. Are you on this side?
Is there any on that side? Okay, but then.
In the middle?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll go here and then go to, if you can raise your hand a bit high, Nick, so that, yeah, behind you is the person. Please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sanaya Zuji from Syria. I founded and manage a platform archiving projects on arts and culture during the revolution and the Syrian war. Okay. I don't think there's magic words. I don't believe in magic anyway. I'm very confused being here. And I'm always confused when I attend to international conferences, because I feel maybe in a metaphoric way that I am mostly in Sami world than in this international world. So I think what is essential is to work and to have knowledge on what we are doing. I join a colleague in saying that I think we missed speaking about politics, because those who hold power are mostly politics, and they decide, they take the big decisions. And if we all agree on the power of culture and art, reflecting the society and thinking the society, so why every time we have problems in budget, the first cut will apply on culture and art? So it is powerful in one hand, but very vulnerable in the other hand. So how also to deal with this contradictory and many, many other contradictories? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think that's definitely a call to action there. Thank you.
Okay.
Nick McDowell, Arts Council, England. Without a livable planet, we can't have much culture. We have diminished culture. I've heard a lot of initiatives, but also a lot of bafflement about environmental responsibility around the conference over the last few days. And one of the most powerful things I heard was Marc speaking so eloquently and so poetically about bringing artists to the centre of each of these debates. So at Arts Council England, we're doing some work in this area already, bringing artists to the heart of solutions. But artists and cultural institutions can be leaders in addressing the climate crisis. So that's my call to action, and I'd encourage IFACCA to adopt that as a policy priority.
Thank you. And Dula, right here.
Hello, my name is Duya. I'm from Mongolia. I am a deaf person speaking through a sign language interpreter, and I want to thank IFACCA for all this work and bringing and including disabled and deaf people's voices. This is my first time participating at a cultural event at this level, and it's quite different from what I've used to. I think I've learned a lot, and I think I've received a lot of information, but I feel I could bring more information to this space. A lot of questions have been raised and gathered over the last couple of days, and I think they relate to me on a personal level. We did the provocations and scenarios around 2050, utopia or dystopia, and it raised a lot of questions that we couldn't answer. The world is shifting, the world is changing. We recognize the importance and work of the culture and arts, but how they can actually impact things is still unclear. Through the pandemic, we've seen people locked in homes, unable to go, unable to develop. Refugees' situations were impacted worse, and culture was lost. In considering future work, we need to reflect upon what we can do to foster and grow culture. We don't have any clear answers as of yet, but I wanted to raise this as I feel it's important we reflect on this in our own spaces, in our own work. Thank you.
I think you had Rosa.
Thank you. Rosa, Culture Academy Singapore. Firstly, on behalf of the Singapore team, I want to thank IFACCA and, of course, our Swedish organizers for this wonderful opportunity that got us all in this big room. And it's only my regret that it's like once every few years, but I think things are moving so fast. Concerns are so real that certainly this has just convinced us that the more conversations there are, I think the better we all are in terms of bridging understanding. It seemed to me that there have been many, many rich discussions and themes that have emerged, and one way forward, as a suggestion, could be to group like-minded interests around themes. There's just so much, so rich, and you can't hope to want to contribute to every space. So it could be, for instance, I saw a few big themes that emerged. One was around inclusion, and I heard a lot of passionate voices, which was very constructive for me to think about my own society. Who are we leaving out in terms of artists' practice? In terms of audiences, I think it's about the big theme of inclusion. And for some societies, it's indigenous people. From other societies, for instance, it could be low-income folks who do not have the access to make art, who may not have been trained to make art in an excellent way, and for audiences, whether they have that access. So I saw one theme around inclusion of groups that have been left out. I think there is a lot of interest around research and data and evidence, and I thought folks who are interested in that could share. Some wonderful work has been done. I want to commend IFACCA for the progress you've made on getting countries to put out how you actually measure the value of the arts. And I think that's a real concrete step that has made much progress. So around evidence and research. There's a third theme which I thought was very useful to think about, and that is probably around the ways in which we can share best practices, because I think every solution now requires more than one player. There's the government, there are corporates, and then there are, of course, community and many stakeholders. And I think different ones of us have probably got good practices around how intermediaries, for instance, can play a role, how non-state players can come forward and better inform those of us who are in government institutions. So I guess my suggestion is that perhaps we could have like-minded countries come together in the broad themes and bring further progress to the great work that IFACCA is already doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think that's all we have time for. One final one then over there.
Sorry. Thank you.
We also had somebody, and we kind of have to, if you can say just like a couple of lines, and so to be fair, we're going to go to the lady there and then to the gentleman in the back, and you're going to say 2 lines and that's it, because we're over time. So no big philosophical statements, please.
Great. I will just say the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act is an excellent model in Wales that has led to the power of the different sectors working together. And as an Arts Council of Wales, we're writing a climate justice strategy, and I'd love to hear from other arts councils doing the same, or to share the learning and what we're doing.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So back there, and then can the other mic quickly go to the lady with the black glasses? And then...
Hi, I'm Tony from Malta. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge and thank everyone, Magdalena and Olu and all the team, for doing such a fantastic job. So on behalf, if I may, of all of us, thank you. So I would like to acknowledge the danger that I kind of thought of in the past days, that we ourselves create hierarchies of marginalized voices simply because one voice is louder than others. It doesn't mean that we do not prioritize because there's urgency, but let us not propagate this hierarchy ourselves through our own programs, initiatives, and policies. Let's treat this complexity as a matrix, as a spectrum of multiple voices that all require care, attention, and space. So I would like to recommend to all arts councils here and agencies and policymakers, go back home, review policies and programs, and ask yourself, be self-critical, whose voice are you stopping, and take one action to change that. This could be changing the language used from, changing from outreach, and suddenly this becomes engagement, changing funding procedures and selection processes. But please, be brave, be radical. Identify the most uncomfortable voices for you. Speak to them, work with them, engage them, let them lead. If not, at least they should lead with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Right. 3 lines. This is going to be tough. Okay, I'm from the hosting country, Sweden. I believe we are a country that is sleeping and turning a blind eye to the things that are right under our noses. So what I'm going to do is mobilize, organize, give power away to marginalized groups, indigenous and others, and most of all, start thinking more like an army that can be more robust and resilient against the forces that are already in action in our country, trying to control the arts and the freedom of the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you can see, the next panel is already on stage, so we will have to wrap up there. It's great that there's so much energy and so much further contribution people want to make, and there will still be ways in which you can still feed back to us, and we'll find ways to ensure that we amplify those contributions as well. But for now, thank you so much for all your contributions.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Olu, for all your work in the development of the program together with the Swedish Arts Council. And now we hand over to, thank you. Now we hand over to our wonderful rapporteurs who have had a very big task, aided by our team led by Elena Poliseva from the IFACCA team, pulling together all of the material, and we'll hear from your perspectives. Have you agreed on an order? Okay. Pamela, and Pamela's going to be speaking partly in Spanish.
Yes,
the floor's yours.
Be prepared with your translation headphones. Okay, here we go. Last day. Good morning to everyone. Multiple experiences were shared during these days, some of them significant reflections and theories shaping scenarios of conversation. Some others were personal stories shining a light on our path for the discussion in freedom of expression. I must be really honest. At this point of the summit, I was hoping to have a robust, a brilliant discourse on this topic, insights, conclusions that will inspire and lead a path for all of you in your practices as cultural workers. But of course, I have nothing of that. But what I can share with you this morning is a couple of questions that I believe have been raised during these days. And for me, here's one of the most relevant ones. Am I really free? Here's another one. What does it take for artists to be free to express themselves? We have spoken here about tools, about resources, about rights. We have spoken about peace and freedom. But where I come from, there is a term that I would like to bring into the conversation as well. A term that led one of the largest social outbreaks in my territory, and this term is dignity. Dignity means many things to many different people. And for example, to me, it means equal opportunities, visibilization and equal payment for women, for displaced artists, for migrants, indigenous people, people with disabilities, and many other communities working in the arts. Oh, but I'm sorry, I should have started from the very beginning. Dignity means at least being remunerated or compensated for your work. Dignity also means having a voice and being able to be heard in your own language. So this is the moment where I'm going to shift to Spanish. I'll give you a minute to. ¿Sí? Okay.
Values and many ideas have been brought up, and I've heard consensus in most of the rooms where I needed to go during these days. But I also need to state something. I've heard a silent dissonance. It's been diplomatic and peaceful in the conversations that we've had amongst ourselves during lunches and during the bus trips. It appears as if there are several debates and discussions going on that we don't dare ourselves to bring them up. And even here among our peers, we don't, because we have to understand we are not free from our own context, from our own institutions, and from our own roles. So I ask, how can we then carry out our work, our responsibility as politicians, creators? So we look at the role of freedom in the arts and then understand that this not only has to do with the creation, but also our responsibility as agents with these small changes that we can achieve in our own context. So this is an open invitation that has been brought up here, and Magdalena reminded us that we should not remain in silence. And we need to confront the system where we are living, whether it's the oppressive system or the patriarchate. And I will finalize with a poetry, because as you have noticed, it's something that we really like. But I'm not going to recite a poem. What I want to talk about, this Nobel Prize winner, and ironically, this is Gabriela Mistral. And Gabriela Mistral said, the right to express yourself freely is a human requirement, so you can never give that up. Without freedom of expression, democracy becomes nothing, and it's always going to be fake and sterile. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Pamela. We will move now to Farai Mpfunya, who's the Executive Director of the Culture Fund for Zimbabwe Trust. And both Farai and Pamela have been part of our advisory committee together with Olu and Brooke Andrew and Farida Shahid and Anupama. Over to you.
Thanks very much. Once again, good morning to you all. Being asked to share reflections is an interesting proposition. I think like we had yesterday, sometimes when you're up here and trying to make everyone be intimate with your reflection is not an easy thing. I'm going to try. A few days ago, I came from Africa. I came from Southern Africa. And I came from Zimbabwe specifically, a long way. An elder brother of mine, a clan leader, a community leader, actually he is a cousin, but we do not have a word for cousin in my native language. So we just call him brother. And he asked me where I was going. I told him that I was invited to Sweden to discuss critical issues and identify actionable ideas about culture. With whom, he went on, with important clan leaders from all over the world and with many different views about their cultures, I responded. For what reason, he asked. I said to contribute to strengthening arts and culture and for individual and collective life worldwide. What? He said. You separate arts and culture? And then he went on to say, be careful what you say out there when you go to Sweden to represent our culture. Then he went on to say, don't forget, eat good food, like we do here. And I hope there is a good solid sun there, because we need it. And then he says, don't forget, we have a family gathering when you come back. And then he says, us Africans love big families. Huh? Food you can smell a mile away. We like to gather and we like to be happy and sad at the same time. We like to tell stories and we like to argue. And we laugh and we cry. We're happy and we're sad. And then we'll do it again. My cousin expects me back home, and he expects me to leave the culture of my people with him very soon after this meeting. I am honored to be here to share these reflections with you. But my first source of responsibility and accountability is to the culture of where I come from. Yes, here in Stockholm we are asked to collectively reflect. And yes, every 2 years we gather in my language to this great dare, Indaba. And we expected to reflect, and we expected to meet happy people, sad people maybe, and to express, hopefully, love, empathy in a collective way for the benefit of those who are not with us here. In my case, when I came the other day, I was greeted at the airport with these lovely Swedish citizens. They were portraits on the wall. And I thought, oh, wow, this is interesting. I'm being greeted by the citizens of Stockholm and Sweden. But as I went along, at the end, I was also greeted by a portrait of the monarch. I felt safe and I thought, okay, there's going to be a space that is safe in a country that's at peace and prosperous, and that I would have space to maneuver and to bring the wisdom of my brother. I felt that I would have conversations, that I'll be provoked, yes, but provoked in a way that is pretty much polite because it's a safe, happy, prosperous country. When I go back, I will be accountable on the impact of my visit here. He actually doesn't believe that I was invited. He actually says, we sent you there to share about our culture. So you come back and tell us the impact of your visit, right? So I'll do that. But I'm sure that he will still ask me most questions. You say, what exactly did you discuss with those clans up there? They do not know our ways, our dreams, our past, not even our future. Yeah? Our future? Well, yes, because where I come from, there is a conflation of time. We live with our ancestors today as they did yesterday, and they tell us about tomorrow. When I came here, the words that I use here is culture as a force. When I was young, I studied engineering, and when I hear force, I hear measure, vector, elements that often do not include things like love and empathy. So my family clan will look at this very differently and say, this is a different kind of culture that you're discussing up there on our behalf, right? And they'll say, yeah, but this is very alien to us and very complex, and I have to make sense with that, because where I come from, culture is not defined as a force, but an energy. The energy includes aspects of love and empathy. That's why they're crying. That's why they're laughing, they're hugging. You smell one another, and you say, ah, you smell good. You last bathed last week. But times are changing. My grandmother now wakes up to the ringtone of Rihanna as she wants to go and get money from a cousin who is working 2 jobs in a very cold country somewhere so that she can buy tomatoes. Many young people are leaving our country because they want to connect to this global force of culture. They want to disconnect to the more empathetic, loving Ubuntu. The concepts of freedom as an individual are very, very difficult for us to understand, because where we come from, Ubuntu means you are because I am, and I am because you are, and we are connected that way. So your freedoms is my freedom, your expression is my expression. My kids were telling me the other day that James Cameron, the American filmmaker, is trying to portray that in his films called Avatar. That we are connected to this big energy, kids, grandmothers, the departed, and the living, and those who will come after us. We came here and we played games in the world cafes, and we imagined 2050 dystopic scenarios. I will report that to my brother. I will tell him that we were concerned about the fragility of the artistic freedoms of human rights of state democracies. I will tell him we called for peace and justice and prosperity for all. I will tell him we were challenged about individual responsibilities to take greater agencies. And I will tell him that we were told that we needed to fight for artistic freedoms, rights, and responsibilities. I will also tell him that we are concerned about binary natures of our conversations. And I also tell him that we also were concerned about the design and the intentions of artistic processes and outputs. I'll also tell my brother that we connected in different sessions that were called workshops and sessions, world cafes, long tables, and coffee breaks. I will tell him some sort of nuances because they thought this is too binary, too rigid, too silo-confined. I'll also tell him, however, that we found ways to deal with historical injustices in some sessions. I'll even tell him that a gentleman from the Cook Islands played the ukulele and the lady danced beautifully to that in helping restoration of historical injustices on stolen artifacts. I will also tell him that in that session I learned about repatriation not being enough, but a word I learned yesterday called rematriation. That it's not enough to just take back what you stole, but you need to do something else in order to heal and to connect to those communities. I will tell him that culture as a dynamic and challenging and independent force, as they describe it here, is something that's different to the way we see culture. Lastly, I have so much to say to him, but I'll skip it as I'm doing now and remind myself of Ubuntu, Sankofa. I'll also then say, when I was listening to different people, was reminded of the Nigerian writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie when she was tasking European nations to confront their role in the history of colonial violence and return artworks and objects of spiritual significance stolen from various parts of continents of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The same Ngozi who warned us about the dangers of a single narrative. I will also tell him about AI and say maybe the next time IFACCA organizes a great meeting of these elders of arts and culture, AI might tell us where to hold it. But I also tell him that will be the time when we all will stand up and say no to AI and say, no, we need to meet in person without you. We need to infuse the spirit into the technique, as one person called it yesterday. And we need to stand up for that right, to smell one another, to cry with one another, and be with one another, and report back to those elders that we left behind. Thank you.
And last but not least, Jozef Kovalčik from the Slovak Arts Council. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I knew that it will be really difficult to speak after you, Farai. To switch to more bureaucratic language. But I will do that because I will speak from perspective of Arts Council or gatekeepers somehow. And I would like to stress 3 different topics which resonated here. And it's really hard to sum up everything, but maybe what is important maybe for us as a representative of the councils, and I find them interesting. First of all, many times was stressed that we should understand freedom of expression as a common good. But common good is maybe even more important for us, because this understanding, what it means, of course, is different as is different the understanding of freedom of expression. But what was stressed many times, it really depends on the context, and this context, as you can see in what you have been talking about, it's crucial for understanding. And what is really also important is that, for me at least, that we are still working with the concept of art, which is pretty modernistic still. And it means that we still expect somehow to be innovative, original, and as Ms. van den Rohe said once, that sometimes it's enough to be good, not original. So it's also to that point we should come back to maybe different concept and to forget it somehow and to be open for more subversive and more creative work which is not connected strictly with originality and the concepts which are more connected to high art, to elitistic understanding of art expression. And also in this context, to understand freedom of expression is completely different than to understand it in context of something else, in a different understanding of creative activities. And in this context also for me it's important to somehow always struggle with elitism, which could also destroy our cultural fields. Elitism excludes and it's not open for margins for people who have no voice. It was mentioned many times that there are many marginal groups which have to have a voice, and Art Council should do that as well, because we are responsible for diversification of art scenes. This is our duty, and we have to do that, and bring more cohesion and opportunities to express in various ways, not just in one. Then, for me, was really important to, the second group, which was important for me, was how I call it, the community building and new technologies and digitalization. in this context was mentioned many times that how important is plurality and not exclusivity. Because we are all of us, we are struggling with that, and we should strive to create communities, not to break them up with creating conditions just for mutual isolation and polarization of the society. So it was again mentioned many times that art scene could be also crucial, art scene understood as a community should be crucial for many solutions in that context as well. And also, we should focus more on projects of broader artistic community and not just supporting success of small circle of global artists. This is also important, you know, not to just support starification of the few and not to support the understanding of, or not to support broader communities in this context. And the last, but not least, is very important for me, and it was mentioned from my colleague from Art Council England, is environmental dimension. The climate change is a big factor for peace and for artistic freedom. And there is a need to make stronger connections between cultural and environmental policies to protect cultural rights and cultural heritage from impact of climate change. This is also important topic for us. Gatekeepers in arts, culture, and media should be more active in promoting climate justice. Artistic initiatives that gave voice to many women and demonstrated how grassroots microsocial projects can push borders, mobilize, and empower people. We should learn from this experience and to learn new environmental sensibility. And this environmental sensibility can be better seen in, and it can show us solutions in our particular context, because I think that there are not really obligations or ways how to deal with these topics in each context. We have different problems in Europe than in Africa, in Asia, and so on. So, but what we should stress, maybe as a association, is this sensibility, which is really important, and the rest is maybe on the real particular context. And also we should consider then the art projects, events, festivity culture, what it means in this context, and artworks. And and this could be a challenge for us, how to create new character of art with this environmental dimension. Art sector can no longer just criticize the others, it must start from itself. Of course, councils must not stand aside and must take proactive steps to make this big shift happen. Without this dimension, I think that we are losing somehow the meaning of our existence. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, a big thank you to all of our rapporteurs who have been listening very well and have divided themselves to ensure that they are everywhere as much as possible. And we've been collating all of this information, and you know that there have been note takers in your sessions, in all of the sessions, to ensure that we capture all of this material that will feed into our post-summit report. So thank you once again to three wonderful rapporteurs, and I'll ask you now to stand down, and we have a surprise for you, which is not in the program, but we're quite certain that you will enjoy. So, it is my great honor to introduce back to the stage Marc Bamuthi Jozef. Sorry, Marc. You can walk, you can walk. Yes, you can.
Hop up on them.
Well, you can. You can slide up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the end. James Brown, right? It's the end.
I'll get down.
Cool. Thanks, for sure. Hey, greetings, everyone. How are you? We still, we're at the end, and the reciprocity thing is still not happening. which maybe as we close would be another thing to remember, that we are actually in the business of energetic reciprocity. So, yeah. A poem, some questions of value. And where's my colleague Pamela? What if dignity were currency? And our business models depended on spinning the capital of dignity into the capital of finance? What if when we said equity, we didn't mean everybody's in the house, we meant equity, like what you have if you own your house? Invested in inclusion to produce equity for diverse communities, which means more than putting on shows or producing symbols. What if all this dis-ease was a prompt for an entrepreneurial reframe, like the explosion of crypto as currency? What if we treated the art of cultivating dignity as an intentional economy? If the product were empathy, and you had to make it, and you had to make it mass accessible, what raw materials would you use? What if dignity were currency and the raw material to make it was culture? What if you worked at a cultural mint and you printed white walls and bright lights and the aesthetic sublime 80% of the time, but 20% of every dime was spent minting cultural equity for the historically left behind? Equity. Not like proportional balance, equity like profit on your P&L balance. Who is manufacturing empathy? Just a little bit. And in the end, wouldn't we all benefit? What if dignity were medicine, were a vaccine, and the public and private sector teamed up to invest in our collective healing? Our country's cultural mints were the place where anybody could get pricked with the sharp edge of culture. A chemical boost included us all, because what we've just learned is that if I'm healthy and you're sick, I'm at risk. Why risk emerging from this moment in a culturally unhealthy way? Why put a cultural inflection point to waste? What if the product were collective healing? And in order to do it, we had to practice more cooperative economics, except no one would buy it if it wasn't fly. So to heal, we had to invest in artists, invested in their individual projects, but used artist intellect to mass produce dignity and put as much equity in it as you would a non-fungible token of a digital object. We make value. Diversity is not a stock to be left alone to accrue. Diversity is a paper-thin pill you gotta keep stacking or else you're not serious. What if you were making a city? How many great artists does it take to make a great city? How many artists does it take to make your country great? If you had equity stakes in empathy, who would you invest in first? In the ecosystem of cultural production, what if we all win if we all win? What if we didn't all have to win? We just remembered when the world was sick and collective healing was something we were all invested in. What if nobody got left behind? What if we healed forward cardinal directions, truth, dimension, humanity, access, latitudes of public imagination, longitudinal public policy, X, Y, Z, axis, access the ancestors, call their names, map the future, collective dignity, the moral compass, invest in the road forward, use culture as brick, and walk the walk. Thank you.
Jozef, one more time. Thank you, Marc, Bamuthi, Jozef, for that wonderful poem that inspired us.
So we are now getting to the very end, and I'm going to hand over the floor to our dear Chair Simon Brault to make an announcement.
So yeah, I heard Marc in Ottawa last week, and I said to all my colleagues that if ever you are invited to any conference in the world, make sure you don't speak after him. And look what happens now. I just want to say we are at the end of the World Summit, and we had, for me, the World Summit was all the conferences, exchanges on the stages, but also all the conversations, in the corridors, in the elevators, in the sidewalk, backstage, and everywhere I've met, I don't know how many people. I found that there was a spirit and an energy here that is so powerful and that was so missing during the years of pandemic. I want to say something about, someone said this morning, and it's absolutely true, that it's not enough. But I think that it is absolutely true, but it is also not absolutely true. I think we live in a moment of transition, and a lot of people talk about even, transitional justice to repair the trauma and the difficulties of this world. We need to accept that we are in a moment of transition. And this moment is happening at a different pace everywhere in the world. And I'm not here to judge, where it happened in countries, but I just want to say that in my own country right now, after years and years of a truth and reconciliation process, my boss, the chair of the Canada Council, the man who is evaluating my performance, is an Indigenous activist, Jessie Wenty. My CFO at Canada Council, so that's the number 2 position at Council, she controls finance, is an Indigenous woman, a Mohawk. The Governor General of Canada is an Inuit woman. So power is shifting. The transition is happening. And in order to make that transition, the only thing we can do is try to make our part. I heard many times, you have power. Yes, but we have very fragmented power. What we have is the power to decide that we will do our part. And I heard so many people who had the chance to speak on the stage, but also a lot of people that were not on the stage, talking about, how they are trying hard to advance an agenda of transformation, trying to get, tips on how you make it happen, and really trying to learn from each other for that to happen. And I think that decolonization, justice will happen. But we cannot move from a stage of trauma or state of injustice to a perfect world. We need to be in that transition, and in that transition, we need to be brave enough to hear about all the different conversations and all that. I heard many times, okay, just get the institution out of the way. But we need them. They are there. They can be transformed. And, and again, it's not because my chair is Indigenous that the Canada Council is decolonized, but it shows that we're progressing in that transition and that we will come eventually to a better stage. This summit marks my last gig as chair of IFACCA and also the end of my mandate at the Canada Council. And I'm not retiring. I will continue to work otherwise, but I just want to say that I have a successor. I have successors coming at Canada Council and here at IFACCA, great successors. I'm very proud of that. And I want to ask to come to the stage my successor here that has been chosen by the board, my dear colleague and friend, Kristen Danielson, the new chair of IFACCA. I would like also to ask the entire board of IFACCA to join us on the stage. Or to stand. So I just want to say that you are in good hands with this group of people at the helm. And I also want to let you know that the nomination for the next World Summit is underway, and that an announcement will be made in early 2024. And I just want to say that we mentioned a lot of challenges over the last few days, but there's also a lot of opportunities. And I think it's very important for all of us to try to amplify the voices that are asking, crying, pleading, asking for change. And I will finish by saying that it has been for me an immense privilege, a luck, an immense honor to try to do my own part with you, all of you in IFACCA, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for putting the trust in me. It's a bit overwhelming for me, I have to say. I'm from a very small town in a very small country, so thank you, IFACCA, for putting a very small nation at the top of this network. And thank you for putting me on stage after first Bamuthi and Simon Brault, I am very happy, I am extremely honored, and I'm inspired, and I'm terrified, because I am succeeding this guy. And if you do not know Simon Brault, let me tell you that he is the rock star of arts leadership in this world. And I'm so proud to know you. And since I started my job in 2016, you have been my go-to. You're truly inspiring and incredibly brave. And what you just said about the transition, you are an inspiration to all of us. And we will continue that work. So I am terrified because Simon has set the standards very high. I feel I need a ladder to reach up to his level. But then again, leadership is never about the leader. It's about the community that you are able to create. And I feel over the last 3 days that this is what we have achieved. We have created community, an IFACCA community. And I hope it has been safe and inclusive. And let me say, Tony Attard, you are very right. We need to redefine the words. Inclusive sounds nice, doesn't it? Kind. But it's about being human. And I would like to thank specifically Doya, our Mongolian colleague, because you put it so beautifully in a panel yesterday, including artists with disability. It's not about me being able to take part in your world. It's you getting a chance to take part in mine. And I think that's the power of the arts, or the energy of the arts that you said, Farai. It's great. We have to trust in that. So for 3 days, we have had community and we've shared our narratives a little. Now we go back to very different realities. Some of us face financial austerity, some of us face political turmoil, and some of us, Vladislav, even war. I can't imagine what that feels like. So as chair of IFACCA, my aim and hope is that we continue this narrative, this community, and that we support each other in solidarity. That's the aim of this. And I'd like to end with a comment that really struck me yesterday from Sarah from Ethiopia. Are you here today? Anyway, she said, and that stayed with me, war is lack of imagination. And if it's like that, please let us invest. Let us invest heavily in imagination. Bamuthi, you asked yesterday, who designs our future? And I would like to share with you some words by someone who has a suggestion, the art historian Simon Sharma. He wrote a brilliant piece called Arts versus Tyrants. And he says, all the stuff of mainstream history, wars, revolutions, economies, is becoming a subset of the engulfing elemental question, the fate of the earth. What humans have done to it, and what they may still yet do to repair the damage. We are running out of time. But what we have not yet exhausted is what, in the end, makes us human, the great storehouse of visionary imagination. So if, at the 11th hour, we manage to pull off the greatest escape act in human history, it will not be data banks or algorithms that will have gotten us there, but something like a poem, a novel, a painting, or a song. So that's the new chair for you in a nutshell, a relentless optimist. Thank you. I am all in.
Stay here. Stay. I have a great job. Thank you. It is really, really exciting to start working with you, Christian, although I am going to squeeze every last minute of you, Simon, over the next 6 weeks. I promise. I really want to take this opportunity to thank Simon. I'm going to struggle here. From the very bottom of my heart, for your unbelievable leadership over the last 5 years. What a partnership. Little did we know that we would confront a pandemic. Your wisdom, your kindness, your boldness, your determination as an agent of positive change has mentored me through these years. I don't think I can say anything else. Sorry. You can't ask a Latin American not to cry, but anyway, you can see the immense power of people, of collaboration, of horizontal exchange, of very different contexts, but coming together under a shared purpose that we think together we can be better, and to be self-critical through that process. And of course, from IFACCA's humble side, we would not be here if it wasn't for you, Kajsa, for your vision, your leadership, the journey that you have taken us through, your amazing team. And a very small token of our appreciation, we thought you should have something small in your space, in your office, to remind us. I also want to ask your leadership team, Bongi McDermott, Rani Kasape, and Aunt Rabbit to also join us, because you are also going to get something for you all. And also a sincere thanks to Helen, Eric, Omer, Eva, Ebba, Seide, and many, many, many more of you. And I do apologize that either I've mispronounced your name or I have left you out. Our heart is big and there are not enough words to thank you. Can you hand? Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Also, a big thank you to Meet Again and our amazing conference organized leader, Martina, all of the volunteers, the incredible SAC staff, and my incredible team, they don't belong to me, the incredible IFACCA team, Anupama, Elena, Sarah, Kate, Francisca, Elliot, Diane. Thank you for your endless nights of work. To the International Program Advisory Committee, and thanking all our speakers, moderators, provocateurs, table hosts, roundup speakers, rapporteurs, and all those involved in the amazing cultural program. And finally, and I'll hand over now to Kajsa, a thank you to you. You have accepted this task with care and empathy, and I humbly believe that we have had solid debate, been a little bit uncomfortable at times, but we have created this collective space. We have been able to have such important conversations. The diversity of audience is remarkable. From the IFACCA family, the current members, our former members, we have a founding chair here, the founding executive chair, director here, our partners, our networks, board, all and friends and new ones. We recognize that we are privileged, as I said. We know that there is resistance taking place in countries like Ukraine. We know that there is silencing of artistic, cultural and musical rights in Afghanistan. We know of the dangers that are happening in different parts of the world, such as Sudan. We know the fragility in Bangladesh and in Syria and so much more. But also we know how fragile our own environments are. So let's not forget about that and keep the conversation alive. That's it from me. Over to you, Kajsa.
One more speech to go, dear friends. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, what touched me to the core these days is the heavy responsibility that artists are carrying to safeguard artistic freedom at great personal risk or loss. From Shahidul Alam, enduring torture because he knows from experience that freedom is more than food and roof over your head. To Livayashi, asking herself, am I really free? Fearing how participating in the summit might damage her family, and yet refusing to censor herself, taking the global stage for the sake of freedom and truth. When will we as policymakers make this our responsibility? It takes courage not to wake up one day finding our freedoms limited by our own society because we have slowly adapted to a new political landscape. Are we, as policy leaders, brave enough? I have listened to Letila Mitchell saying that it is not only about being allowed to express yourself, but also about being allowed to be who you are. I acknowledge the critique directed to the Swedish state for underfunding our own indigenous people. Lisa Rana Finnborg and Åsa Simma gave voice to the Swedish history and the urge for further steps in the decolonization with funding that celebrates Sami cultural rights. Are we in the Nordics ready to take the next step? I have listened to the sound of war, conflict and Taliban steps in the streets, silencing children's laughter and with that any freedom of creativity. Are we as citizens prepared to show the necessary solidarity to secure a future for our children? I have listened to you speaking about silos and polarization. Are we empathetic enough to bridge the gap? I have heard that artists need to be autonomous. Are we prepared to bring artists and civil society to the decision table on their own terms? I have listened and I have heard that diversity is a precondition of artistic freedom. My deepest thanks to all speakers, workshop leaders and artists for creating such a nuanced and thought-provoking summit, urging for us to take action. Thanks to the Swedish Ministries of Culture and International Affairs, SIDA, for a valuable partnership within the Program for Artistic Freedom, Riksteatern for the powerful artistic program. Thanks to the City of Stockholm for a shimmering evening, the Nordic Culture Fund and Salzburg Global Seminar for eloquent speakers, Moderna Museet for the Culture Evening, Canada Council, Canadian Embassy and the Swedish Institute for the exhibitions, and to all our other partners for making the summit possible. Thanks also to UNESCO for committing to the promoting artist freedom within the 2005 convention. It might be time for artists to get the same status as other human rights defenders. Thank you to IFACCA, to Magdalena and the team for this incredible opportunity and journey. We need the IFACCA network to continue our dialogue, and we meet again at the 10th World Summit on Arts and Culture. And to you that are thinking of hosting it, I'll do it again. It has given us synergies, knowledge, motivation, and a global family. My next step will be to continue to foster artistic freedom nationally and globally. I will advance our work for the national minorities and indigenous people in our region. I will follow how the rapid development in digitalization and the climate crisis affect arts and culture and act accordingly. And I will honor the international commitments that Sweden has made within the UN framework. I will bring with me that artistic freedom is about the freedom of the artist, as well as the freedom of all the different people taking part in culture, in their culture. I hope you will join me in taking action. I have also listened to the power of the collective manifested by Lastes's video work. That gives me hope. Well, it's time to move from urgency to agency, and we have a responsibility to defend artistic freedom as a fundamental human right, and we can only do so by working together. Well, you know, you can see up here that my name is Kajsa Ravin, but my name could have been Kajsa Kursompalo if I would have had the origin name of my father. And I want to end by trying to, with help from Åsa, say to you, thank you, and tervetuloa takaisin, which means until we meet again in my father's language. Thank you. So,
Thank you.